The knife slipped from my hand, clattering against the marble countertop like a gunshot in the quiet house. And in that split second, Mark's eyes locked onto mine, raw, unguarded, as if he'd been waiting for the world to shatter. "I can't do this anymore," he whispered, his voice cracking like dry earth under summer rain. The words hanging heavy between us while my dad's laughter echoed faintly from the living room. Blood trickled from my thumb, warm and accusing, but it was the heat rising in my chest that burned hottest, pulling me toward him like gravity had rewritten itself just for this stolen afternoon in our family's sprawling Ohio kitchen. I was 22, home from my junior year at Ohio State, crashing back into the rhythm of suburbia like a record skipping on its groove. Columbus had been a whirlwind of late-night cram sessions, frat parties that left me hollow, and a string of half-hearted hookups that never stuck. But here in Hudson, Ohio, tree-lined streets, white picket fences, the kind of place where neighbors still wave from their lawns, everything felt smaller, safer, and infinitely more suffocating. My dad, Tom Riley, was the king of that world. High school football coach turned car dealership owner, all broad shoulders and booming laughs. The man who taught me to throw a spiral before I could tie my shoes. He was straight as an arrow, married to my mom until the cancer took her 5 years back, and now he filled the silence with barbecues and bad dad jokes. Mark Harlan had been Dad's best friend since they were kids terrorizing the backfields of Hudson High. They'd played quarterback and center, respectively, back in the 90s, and even now, in their mid-40s, they ribbed each other like nothing had changed. Mark was the quiet counterpoint to Dad's bluster, tall, lean from years of weekend hikes in the Cuyahoga Valley, with salt and pepper hair that made him look like a wiser, world-weary version of Harrison Ford. He ran a small architecture firm in Akron, designing modest homes for families who dreamed big but budgeted small. Divorced a decade ago, no kids, he was the uncle who showed up with thoughtful gifts. A leather-bound journal for my high school graduation, a vintage compass for my first backpacking trip. He'd always been there, a steady shadow in our lives, but I'd never really seen him until that 4th of July weekend. It started innocently enough, or so I told myself later. Dad had fired up the grill in the backyard, the air thick with charcoal smoke and the sizzle of burgers, while Mom's old flower beds bloomed riotously under the relentless Midwest sun. A dozen friends and neighbors milled about, beers in hand, kids chasing fireflies early, the American flag fluttering from the porch like it was auditioning for a Norman Rockwell painting. I was nursing a lukewarm IPA, dodging small talk with Mrs. Hargrove about my future plans, when Mark wandered over, plate balanced with coleslaw and ribs. "Alex, you look like you could use a refill," he said, his voice low and easy, nodding at my bottle. Those blue eyes crinkled at the corners, the ones that always seemed to hold a secret joke just for me. "Yeah, maybe," I replied, surprised at how my pulse quickened. It was nothing, I thought, just the heat or the beer or the way the afternoon light caught the stubble on his jaw. But when he clapped a hand on my shoulder, firm and warm, guiding me toward the cooler, something shifted. A current, subtle as a breeze through the cornfields, but undeniable. We talked then, really talked, for the first time in years. Not the surface stuff, classes, internships, but the undercurrents. How the city made me feel alive but unmoored, like I was chasing shadows of who I was supposed to be. How he'd left corporate design for his own firm because life's too short to build someone else's dream. His laugh was rare, a deep rumble that vibrated through me, and when he asked about the tattoo I'd gotten on my ribs, a compass rose, inked during a drunken night in Columbus. I lifted my shirt without thinking, showing him the faded lines. "It's pointing you home, huh?" he'd said, his fingers hovering an inch from my skin, not touching but close enough to raise goosebumps. I nodded, throat tight, and that was when Dad bellowed from the grill. "Mark, get your ass over here and flip these before they char." The party dragged on into dusk, fireworks popping over the Hudson Reservoir like distant artillery. I retreated inside eventually, the noise too much, the crowd too familiar. The kitchen was cool and dim, fluorescent hum the only sound as I rummaged for aspirin in the cabinet above the sink. Footsteps behind me, soft, deliberate, and there was Mark, sleeves rolled up, tie loosened from the collar of his button-down. Headache from the blasts? He asked, leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed. Something like that. I turned, popping 2 pills dry, and that's when it happened. The knife, Dad's old chef's blade, left out from slicing watermelon, gleamed on the counter. I reached for it absently, maybe to cut a lemon for water, but my hand shook. It slipped, nicking my thumb deep enough to well red. And Mark, Mark, moved like instinct, crossing the room in 2 strides, grabbing a dish towel and pressing it to the cut. Hold still, he murmured, his face inches from mine, breath minty from the gum he chewed when he was thinking too hard. Our eyes met and time fractured. In that gaze, I saw it all. The weight he carried, the years of quiet endurance, the flicker of something forbidden and fierce. His hand on mine was steady, but his thumb brushed my knuckle once, twice, a Morse code of hesitation. I can't do this anymore, he said then, the words escaping like a confession long bottled. His voice broke on the anymore, and I felt it in my bones. The pain of it, the pull. Dad's laughter filtered in from outside, oblivious, a world away. Blood soaked the towel, but it was the ache in my chest that bled freely, drawing me closer until our foreheads nearly touched. What can't you do? I whispered, my free hand rising to his arm, gripping the fabric of his shirt like it was a lifeline. He pulled back first, eyes darkening with regret. Forget it, kid. Just go get that stitched if it keeps bleeding. He released me, stepping away as if burned, and busied himself at the sink, rinsing the knife with unnecessary force. I stood there, thumb throbbing, heart hammering. The kitchen suddenly too small for the secret we'd almost unearthed. That night, I lay awake in my childhood bed. The glow in the dark stars Mom had stuck to the ceiling long faded to ghosts. The cut had stopped bleeding, bandaged clumsily, but the wound Mark had opened refused to close. I'd always known I was gay. Whispers in high school locker rooms, the crushes on boys who never looked back. But this was different. Mark wasn't some fleeting dorm fling. He was woven into my family's fabric, a constant I'd taken for granted. And now, replaying that moment, the intensity in his eyes, the tremor in his voice, I wondered if he'd felt it too. Or worse, if he had, and it terrified him. The next morning, Dad dragged us to the annual Hudson fireworks cleanup at the park, volunteer duty, his way of giving back to the community that had made him. Mark was there, of course, in cargo shorts and a faded OSUT, hauling trash bags with the easy grace of someone who'd never lost his athletic edge. I avoided his gaze at first, stacking folding chairs under the pavilion, the July humidity clinging like guilt. But when our paths crossed by the trash bins, he paused, wiping sweat from his brow. About last night, he started, voice pitched low. It's fine. I cut in, sharper than I meant. I get it. Heat of the moment. He studied me, those blue eyes piercing. It's not that simple, Alex. You're dead. This town. I've got history here. History. The word landed like a stone in still water. I knew the outlines. His ex-wife, Sarah, who'd left him for a life in Chicago, citing his emotional distance. Whispers at family gatherings about how he'd thrown himself into work after, dating sporadically but never seriously. Dad always joked Mark was married to the blueprint. But now I wondered if there was more. A closet door cracked but never flung wide. Tell me? I pressed, glancing around to ensure we were alone. The park was emptying, families picnicking on the grass, the reservoir glittering under the noon sun. What can't you do anymore? He sighed, running a hand through his hair. Pretend. With you around. It's harder. You're not a kid anymore, Alex. You see things. And he stopped, jaw tightening. Look, let's just drop it. For Tom's sake. But dropping it was impossible. The rest of the weekend blurred into a haze of avoidance and stolen glances. At dinner that Sunday, roast chicken and Mom's potato salad recipe. Mark sat across from me, our knees brushing under the table once, accidentally or not. Dad prattled on about the dealership's new inventory, oblivious, but I caught Mark's flush, the way his fork paused midair. After, as we cleared plates, he cornered me by the garage. Meet me at the Valley Trail tomorrow morning? Before I head back to Akron. We need to talk. I nodded, pulse racing. The Cuyahoga Valley National Park was our shared escape, Dad and Mark's old hiking grounds, now mine for solitary runs. Dawn broke misty and cool as I drove my beat-up Civic along the winding roads, the forest canopy dappling sunlight like scattered coins. Mark's truck was already parked at the trailhead, a thermos of coffee waiting on the hood. We walked in silence at first, boots crunching gravel, the air rich with pine and earth. Birds called overhead, indifferent to the storm brewing between us. Finally, on an overlook bench facing the winding Cuyahoga River, he spoke. I've known since college, he said flatly, staring at the water. Tom was the first person I told. Drunk after a game, thought it'd ruin everything. But he just clapped me on the back, said, "Doesn't change a damn thing, Harlan. You're still a lousy free throw shooter." He chuckled, bitter. That was 30 years ago. I've kept it buried since. Sarah knew eventually. It ended us. I listened, heart aching for the boy he'd been, closeted in a town that prized conformity above all. Why tell me now? Because you force it out of me, Alex. That look in the kitchen. It's like looking in a mirror. Hungry. Lost. He turned then, and the rawness in his face undid me. But you're Tom's son. This crosses lines I can't uncross. The confession hung there, electric. I wanted to bridge the gap, to tell him I felt it too, the pull, the recognition of something profound and unspoken. Instead, I said, "What if the lines are already blurred?" He stood abruptly, pacing to the railing. "They're not. Not yet. Go back to Columbus, kid. Build your life. Forget this trail. Forget me." But forgetting was a lie we both knew. As I drove home, the river's curve burned into my mind. I realized this was no fleeting crush. It was a reckoning for both of us. The semester roared back to life in Columbus like a freight train, lectures blending into all-nighters. The Olentangy River a constant companion for my restless jogs. I threw myself into it, graphic design major, portfolio deadlines, the campus queer alliance meetings where I finally started opening up about more than surface stories. But Mark lingered like a half-finished sketch, his words echoing in quiet moments. We texted sparingly. "How's the workload?" From him, my surviving replies laced with subtext neither acknowledged. Fall turned crisp, leaves carpeting the oval in fiery reds and golds, and Dad called one October evening, voice tight. "Mark's in trouble, son. Firm's going under, recession's biting hard. He's selling the house in Akron." My stomach dropped. What can we do? Help him move, for starters. He's got a buyer lined up, but the packing. Come home this weekend. I did, arriving to a chaos of cardboard boxes and dust motes dancing in the weak autumn light. Mark's Craftsman bungalow was a time capsule, mid-century modern sketches pinned to walls, bookshelves groaning under architecture tomes and dog-eared sci-fi novels. He looked gaunt, shadows under his eyes, directing movers with clipped efficiency. "Alex," he said when he saw me, surprise softening his edges. "Didn't expect you." Dad twisted my arm. I hefted a box of kitchenware, following him inside. The space smelled of sawdust and coffee, intimate in its disarray. We worked side by side that day, unpacking memories as much as dishes. He shared stories over lukewarm pizza, his first solo build, a tiny cabin in the Adirondacks. The divorce papers served on his birthday. Laughter crept in, tentative, then full-throated when I recounted a disastrous group project involving edible architecture models that collapsed into frosting chaos. By evening, the house echoed empty, and Dad had begged off early for a coach's meeting. Mark and I sat on the front steps, porch light buzzing overhead, passing a six-pack as stars pricked the sky. "To new beginnings," he toasted, clinking bottles. His knee rested against mine, casual but charged. "Or old ones revisited," I countered, emboldened by the beer and the vulnerability in his posture. He didn't pull away. Instead, he sighed, head tipping back. "Your trouble, Riley. Always were, even as a scrawny kid tagging along on hikes." Tell me more about that kid, I said, turning toward him. The street was quiet, neighbors' TVs murmuring through windows. Mark's gaze drifted. You were fearless. Climbed that oak by the river like a monkey. No fear of heights. Tom and I betting on how high you'd go. A pause, then softer. I envied that. Still do. The admission cracked something open. I set my bottle down, hand finding his on the step between us. His fingers were calloused from drafting pencils, warm despite the chill. He didn't flinch, didn't move at all. As I traced the veins on the back of his hand. Mark, I breathed, the name a question and a plea. His eyes met mine, stormy with conflict. This is dangerous. Then let's be dangerous. I leaned in, heart thundering, and he met me halfway. Not a kiss, not yet, but a forehead press, breaths mingling in the space between. It was enough, more than enough, to ignite the spark we'd both been fanning. That night, he drove me back to my parents' house. The truck's cab thick with unspoken promises. At the door, his hand lingered on my arm. Coffee tomorrow? Before I close on the place. I nodded, and the next morning found us at a diner on the edge of town. Formica counters, bottomless Joe, the kind of spot where truckers and locals nursed regrets over eggs. We talked for hours, the world shrinking to our booth. He confessed the loneliness of his closet life, the parade of beards and blind dates that never filled the void. I shared my own fears. Coming out to Dad loomed like a storm cloud, the dealership's macho culture a minefield. You're brave, he said, stirring sugar into his mug. Bolder than I ever was at your age. Teach me, then. The words slipped out, half joke, half truth. His smile was wry. Careful what you wish for. But wishes have a way of twisting. 2 weeks later, Dad announced Mark was crashing with us indefinitely. Till he gets back on his feet. His guest room now a makeshift office of blueprints and takeout containers. Proximity turned tension into torment. Mornings, I'd catch him shirtless in the kitchen, pouring cereal, the play of muscle under skin a quiet torture. Evenings, we'd steal hours in the den, watching old westerns while Dad snored through football replays, our shoulders brushing on the couch. The first real kiss came on a rainy November night, thunder rumbling like judgment over Lake Erie. Dad was at a game. The house groaned under the storm's weight. Mark found me in the laundry room, folding clothes to the drone of the dryer. Can't sleep? He asked, leaning in the doorway, hair damp from a shower. Too much noise. I straightened, towel in hand, and he closed the distance. It was slow, deliberate. His hand cupping my jaw, thumb grazing my stubble, lips tentative as if testing fragile glass. When I parted for him, deepening it, he groaned low, pulling me flush against him. Rain lashed the windows. Our world narrowed to heat and heartbeat, hands mapping uncharted territories with reverence, not rush. We broke apart breathless, foreheads together again. This is real, he murmured, wonder in his voice. Yeah, I agreed, terrified and alive. It is. From there, it bloomed, secret dates disguised as errands. Hikes where hands intertwined on hidden paths, texts that set my phone buzzing at midnight. Mark opened up, layer by layer. The architecture scholarship he'd won but nearly forfeited for fear of scrutiny. The one-night stand in college that confirmed what he'd long suspected. I, in turn, let him see my sketches, digital designs of sustainable homes, inspired by his passion. He critiqued gently, praising the innovation, and in those moments I felt seen truly. Christmas approached, snow blanketing Hudson in hush. Dad planned the usual. Tree trimming party, lights strung like stars across the eaves. Mark helped, of course, teasing me about my lopsided ornaments while Dad belted carols off-key. But under the mistletoe, tacked up as a joke, our eyes met across the room, a silent vow amid the cheer. Then the call came on Christmas Eve. Mark's phone buzzed during eggnog. He stepped into the garage, voice rising in clipped anger. I followed quietly, eavesdropping from the shadows. I said no, Richard. It's over. That was years ago. A pause, then, don't threaten me. You have no proof. He hung up, shoulders slumped, and I slipped away before he saw. But the seed of doubt took root. Who was Richard? And what proof? The new year dawned brittle. Mark landed freelance gigs, remodels for Cleveland firms, but the cloud lingered. One night, after Dad crashed early, we curled on the den couch, a quilt over us against the draft. His head on my chest, I asked, "Who's Richard?" He stiffened, then sighed. Ex, from Akron days. Toxic. Wanted more than I could give. Threats. Empty ones. He kissed my collarbone, deflecting. Don't worry. But worry not. February brought blizzards, confining us indoors, and in the steam of shared showers, innocent at first, now charged, we found solace. Yet, cracks showed. His phone silenced at odd hours, a hurried delete of messages when I entered the room. Spring thaw mirrored my unease. I returned to Columbus for finals, the distance a mercy and a curse. Texts grew sporadic, calls cut short by client emergencies. When I came home for Easter, Dad pulled me aside in the driveway. Mark's been off. Distant. You notice. He's stressed. I lied, gut twisting. Work. But it wasn't just work. Late one April night, insomnia drove me downstairs for water. The kitchen light spilled soft. Mark sat at the island, laptop open, face illuminated by a video call window. Paused, but not before I glimpsed the man on screen. Sharp features, silver temples, a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Richard. The name escaped before I could stop it. Mark slammed the laptop shut, guilt flashing. Alex, it's not. Who is he to you? My voice rose, raw. Really? He stood, hands raised. A mistake. From before us. He's trying to pull me back in. But I swear. Show me. I nodded at the screen. Prove it. Reluctance warred in his eyes, but he opened it. A string of emails, old and new. Richard's words a mix of nostalgia and manipulation. Remember us in that cabin? You were alive then. Attached photos. Them younger, arms around each other in a snowy Adirondack porch. Mark's face alight in a way I'd never seen. Jealousy surged, hot and irrational. You loved him. Once. Thought I did. He closed the laptop gently. But it's you now, Alex. Only you. I wanted to believe him. Crossed the room to claim his mouth, fierce and forgiving. But doubt lingered, a shadow in our paradise. Summer break arrived sweltering, internships calling me to a design firm in Cleveland, 40 minutes from Hudson, close enough for stolen weekends. Mark's firm stabilized. He rented a loft downtown, but spent most nights at our place, Dad none the wiser. Our love deepened in those months. Picnics by the river, where he'd sketch me dozing against a tree. Drives along the lake shore, windows down, his hand on my thigh as Springsteen wailed from the speakers. Yet Richard's ghost haunted. Anonymous emails started arriving at Mark's work address. Forwarded to me once, a photo of us at the diner, time-stamped. Does the boy know? The caption read. Panic set in. We have to tell Dad, I urged one night, tangled in sheets in his new loft, city lights flickering beyond the blinds. Mark traced my spine. Evasive. Not yet. It'll destroy him, us, or free us. But he rolled away, back to me, and the argument died unspoken. The betrayal brewed slowly, then erupted on a humid July evening. Dad's dealership hosted a client barbecue. Steaks, fireworks over the lot, the elite of Summit County mingling under string lights. Mark and I played it cool, separate conversations, stolen touches in the shadows. But as dusk fell, I spotted him by the fence, phone to ear, voice low and urgent. I said, meet me. We end this now. He pocketed it, scanning the crowd, saw me watching. Alex, wait. But I didn't. Heart pounding, I slipped through the gate, following the fence line to the service road. There, under the sodium glow of a street lamp, waited Richard. Tailored suit, predatory smile, hand extended as Mark approached. They embraced. Not brotherly, but loaded, Richard's palm lingering on Mark's neck. Words exchanged, too low to hear, but the tilt of Richard's head, the way Mark's shoulders sagged. It was intimacy, unresolved. I turned away, bile rising, fleeing back to the party. Dad found me by the grill, face ashen. "You okay, son?" "Fine," I choked, grabbing keys. "Just need air." The drive to Columbus was a blur, tears blurring taillights. How could he? After everything, the confessions, the promises. Betrayal tasted like ash. The kitchen moment mocked in memory. Days passed in radio silence. Then, a knock at my dorm. Dad. Unannounced, concern etching his face. "Mark's gone AWOL. Packed a bag. Left a note. Need space." "What's going on, Alex?" I broke then, sobs racking as the truth spilled. Not all, but enough. Dad's arms around me, strong and steady. That idiot. He should have known better. We drove back together, the hour stretching eternal. At the loft, Richard's car idled curbside. Inside, voices rose. Mark's, furious. "Get out. I choose him." Richard's laugh, cruel. "The kid? You'll tire of that puppy love." The door flew open. Mark stormed out, spotting us. His face crumpled, relief, shame. "Tom. Alex." Dad stepped forward, hand on his shoulder. "You too? How long?" Mark glanced at me, eyes pleading. "Since last fall." I tried to fight it. Silence, heavy. Then Dad exhaled, long and ragged. "World's changing, Harlan. But hurting my boy? That's not." Richard emerged then, smug, but Dad's glare pinned him. "You. Or I call the cops on whatever game this is." He slunk away, tail between legs. Inside we sat, 3 men, fractured family, piecing truths. "I'm sorry," Mark whispered to me, hand seeking mine. I panicked. He threatened to out me to old clients. Ruin everything. "Fool," I said, but pulled him close. Forgiveness wasn't easy, but love demanded it. The fallout reshaped us, like a blueprint redrawn in earthquake aftermath. Dad didn't rage or disown. His was a quieter grief, processing over late-night whiskeys in the den, where Mark and I joined him eventually, confessions layering like sedimentary rock. "I knew you were gay, Mark," he admitted one night, ice clinking. "Guessed after Sarah. Never pushed cause. Brothers, right? To me, proud of you, son, for being honest." Tears then, rare for him, sealing a new pact. Richard vanished, a cease and desist from Mark's lawyer ensuring silence. But scars lingered, trust, fragile as fresh mortar. Summer waned. I returned to Columbus, Mark to Akron gigs. Our rhythm now video calls at dawn. Weekends stolen in neutral Cleveland cafes. Love matured, less fevered, more deliberate. Letters postmarked from his travels, my sketches framed on his desk. Fall semester hit hard, senior year, thesis looming, a queer lit class dissecting Baldwin and White that mirrored our mess. Protests brewed on campus too, against some state bill curbing LGBTQ rights, banners waving like battle flags. I marched. Mark's texts my armor. "Fight smart. Come home safe." Home. Hudson felt layered now. Mom's garden a shrine. Dad's dealership a fortress. Mark bought a fixer-upper in Fairlawn, a mid-century ranch begging restoration. We gutted it together, weekends hammering drywall, painting walls sunset gold. Sweat and sawdust bonded us deeper, arguments flaring over grout colors but fizzling into laughter. His hand steadying mine on the ladder. Yet conflict simmered external. Dad's world, coaches, clients, whispered. A sidelong glance at the next tailgate. A joke about city influences on me. Mark bore it stoically, but I saw the toll. Shoulders hunched after donor meetings, where old money types probed his personal life. One crisp October Eve, crisis crested. Dad's big gala, fundraiser for the high school athletic fund, black ties and bourbon at the country club. We attended as friends. Mark in a sharp navy suit that hugged his frame, me fidgeting in rented tux. Toasts rang, Dad beaming center stage, but midway, a drunk booster cornered Mark by the bar. "Heard you're batting for the other team now, Harlan? That why the X is stirring shit?" Mark's jaw clenched. I stepped in, voice steel. Back off, Mr. Ellis. Private matters. The man sneered. Private? In this town? Boy, you learn quick. Fists balled, but Mark pulled me away, into the coat room's dim hush. Not worth it. Worth everything? I shot back, chest heaving. We can't hide forever. His eyes, shadowed, held mine. Maybe we don't, but tonight we survive. We did. Escaped to the valet lot, driving aimlessly until we parked by the reservoir, moon silvering the water. There, in the truck's cab, he broke. I'm tired, Alex, of the eggshells. Richard was right about one thing. I was alive once. Reckless. Want that with you, no chains. Then let's cut them. I kissed him then, fierce under stars, hands roaming with intent born of defiance. Not lust, but affirmation, bodies affirming what words couldn't yet. November brought Thanksgiving, a tense family affair. Dad invited Mark, no qualifiers. Aunts and uncles eyed us curiously, but his arm around my chair back spoke volumes. Pie cooled on the sill. Stories flowed, Mom's absence a gentle ache. After, as snow-dusted lawns, Mark and I walked the block, breath fogging. Love you, he said first, stopping under a street lamp. Simple, profound. Love you back. We stood there, ungloved hands clasped, a quiet coming out to the neighborhood's watchful windows. Winter gripped hard, blizzards stranding us in Fairlawn, the ranch half-built but home. We cooked stews from canned goods, danced to scratchy vinyl, Johnny Cash's gravel voice our soundtrack. Intimacy wove deeper. Mornings tangled in flannel sheets, his fingers tracing my tattoo. Evenings debating designs, his head on my lap as I read aloud from my thesis. But climax loomed, inevitable as spring equinox. Richard resurfaced. Not directly, but through venom. Leaked emails to Mark's clients, twisting old affairs into scandals, painting him unstable. Gigs dried. The ranch payments loomed. Dad stepped in, leveraging dealership contacts for leads, but pride stung Mark raw. You're not alone, I reminded, during a March argument, snow melting to mud outside. Feels like it, he snapped, pacing the bare living room. Dragging you down, Tom, too. You're not. I blocked his path, hands on his chest. We're building this. Together. He deflated, pulling me close. Scared I'll lose you. Never. But fear echoed mine too. What if the town's undertow pulled us under? April bloomed treacherous. My thesis defense nailed. A+ on sustainable queer spaces, ironically apt, and graduation beckoned. Job offers trickled. A firm in Chicago, tempting with anonymity. Pittsburgh, closer but conservative. Mark urged choice, selfless. Go where you shine, he said over diner coffee, eyes pained. With you, I countered. Fairlawn's home now. But betrayal's echo stirred fresh storm. Dad called mid-May, voice grave. Mark's in the hospital. Car accident, rear-ended on I-77. Richard. Cops say he tailed him. Rage and terror collided. I raced the 2 hours, bursting into the ER, where Dad waited, face haggard. Mark, bruised but unbroken, concussion, whiplash, lay in a curtained bay, for dripping. Alex, he rasped, gripping my hand. I'm okay. You're not. Tears fell. I leaned in, kissing his knuckles. Nurses averted eyes, but Dad stood sentinel. Richard was arrested, stalking charges, evidence from dashcams. But the damage. Mark's truck totaled, spirit cracked. Recovery crawled, PT sessions, nightmares of headlights. I deferred Chicago, moved into the ranch temporarily, nursing him through fevers and doubts. Why me? He murmured one night, painkillers blurring edges. What did I drag you into? Love, I said simply, spooning broth. The messy kind. Summer solstice marked turning. Cops closed the case. Richard plea bargained, exiled to Chicago under probation. Mark's firm rebounded, Dad's network gold, and we finished the ranch. Exposed beams, a studio for my designs, his drafting table by the window overlooking wildflower meadows. Yet climax crested not in violence, but vulnerability. Graduation weekend, sun-drenched stadium, Dad whooping from stands as I crossed the stage. After party at home, barbecue redux but open now. I stood with Mark on the porch, beers raised. To us, I toasted. He smiled, true and bright. To forever. But forever tests. That night, as guests thinned, Dad pulled us aside. Seeing you two makes me miss your mom more, but also hopeful. He hugged Mark fierce. Take care of him, brother. We'll take care of each other. Autumn unfurled golden, a canvas for rebirth. I started at the Pittsburgh firm, commutable, creative freedom, while Mark's practice bloomed, commissions for eco-homes stacking like cordwood. Weekdays blurred. My city renders syncing with his hand sketches over shared drives. Evenings, we met midway at a Canton bistro, dissecting days over craft Alesh. Love settled, roots delving deep. No longer wildfire, but hearth steady. Hudson softened too. Dad came out to his team, not with fanfare, but quiet resolve. My son's gay. Deal with it or deal with me. Backlash murmured, but loyalty held. A few coaches even shared stories. Closets cracked open. Pride flags dotted porches come June. Rainbow stickers on bumpers. A quiet revolution in our Rockwell town. Yet drama lingered, subtle. Richard's shadow? Erased, but echoes in Mark's hesitance. Therapy sessions now, unpacking decades of denial. I joined once, a rainy Tuesday, the counselor's office smelling of chamomile and change. Betrayal's a teacher, she said, as Mark voiced fears of unworthiness. I squeezed his hand under the table. Student here too. Winter holidays healed further. Christmas at the ranch, our first, tree felled from the valley, ornaments mingled. Mom's glass icicles beside Mark's architectural baubles. Dad arrived with pie, stayed for games, his laughter freer. No mistletoe traps, just presents. 3 generations, blood and chosen, toasting amid twinkle lights. Spring 2026 whispered promise. My first solo project, a community center in Akron, queer-inclusive design, broke ground, Mark consulting pro bono. We attended the ceremonial dig, dirt under nails, his arm around my waist as cameras clicked. Local paper ran a feature. Local architects build bridges. Photo capturing our linked hands, unapologetic. But no story arcs without shadow. June heat wave brought crisis. Dad's annual physical unearthed arrhythmia. Treatable, but a wake-up. Slow down, old man, Mark ribbed during hospital wait, masking fear. I'm slowing, Dad replied, eyeing us. You too? Keep running toward each other. Recovery mirrored ours, paced, supported. Barbecues resumed, lighter now with Mark flipping burgers, me on playlist duty. Springsteen to Hosier, Dad humming along. Climax deferred, arrived softly that August Eve. Valley Trail, full circle anniversary of our first real talk. Picnic packed. Sandwiches, thermos wine, wildflowers tucked in my pack. Sunset painted the river crimson. We sat on that overlook bench, years etched in laugh lines. Regrets? Mark asked, head on my shoulder. None. I turned, drawing a small box from my pocket. Not ring, not yet, but keys. To the ranch engraved ours. Future's ours to build. His eyes misted. He kissed me slow, river murmuring approval. No grand gestures, just us, flawed and full. Fall deepened resolve. I proposed not on bended knee, but blueprint. Sketched home edition. A nursery? Studio? Whatever came, space for dreams. He accepted with a yes carved in wood. Hung above our bed. Winter solstice, we hosted Dad. Friends from the Alliance, Mark's old college buddy who'd flown in. Laughter echoed. Stories wove, past yielding to present. No by kitsch, but humanism. Love as verb, chosen daily amid America's vast, varied heartland. Years later, looking back, that kitchen slip, the hook of blood and breath, I'm grateful for the shatter. It revealed not just Mark, but me, resilient, rooted. In Hudson's quiet streets, under endless skies, we thrive. Not perfect, but profoundly human. Forever? Perhaps. But today suffices, hand in hand, building on.